Lesson 5, I will compare numbers based on meanings of the digits using greater than, less than, or equal to record the comparison. So today there are no first do's. We are going to do all the problems in order. All right, so get out your problem set and we're going to begin right at problem number 1. So the directions say label the units in the place value chart. Draw place value discs to represent each number in the place value chart. Use less than, greater than, or equal to compare the numbers. Write the correct symbol in the circle. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to label the place value chart. I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to label the place value chart, and I want you to do the same thing. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video and you labeled. Let's check and make sure that our labels are the same. So you have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. So notice where we have this heavy dark line is where we have our families. So this is the ones family, thousands family, and then this would be the millions family. It would continue into the 10 millions and 100 millions. So now we're going to draw a place value disc to represent each number. So I'm going to start with 600,015. So I'm going to put 6 in the 100,000s. There are no 10,000s. There are no thousands. There are no hundreds. There is 1 10, and there are 5 ones. I want you to draw a place value disc for 60,015 by yourself. So we're going to pause the video. I want you to draw this by yourself. You pause the video too, and then I want you to put the place value disc in the place value chart by yourself. Okay, so let's check together. So you should have noticed that in this number there were no 100,000s, but there were 6 10,000s, there was 1 10, and there were 5 ones. So which of these places has the greatest value? Well, in these two particular numbers, the 100,000s has the greatest value. And our first number has 600,000s, and our second number doesn't have any 100,000s. Therefore, that would help us to be able to compare. So we would say 600,015 is greater than 60,015. I like to remember that the little number eats the big number. So I always think of this as a mouth, and the little number eats the big number, which is kind of the opposite of what you would think. All right, so let's take a look at B. I'd like for you to try to do as much of B as you can. We're going to do it exactly like A. We're going to label the place value chart. We're going to put place value disc for both numbers, and then we're going to compare. So pause the video and do as much as you can. If you get stuck, you can always press play and I'll help you. Okay, so first of all, let's make sure that we labeled our place value chart correctly. So you should have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. And then our first number, we had 400,000s, no 10,000s, 9,000s, no hundreds, no tens, 4 ones. In our second number, we had 400,000s, 4 10,000s, no thousands, no hundreds, no tens, and 2 ones. So this number is a little bit different than A because our largest value is in the 100,000s, and hopefully you notice that both of these are equal. They both have a 4 in the 100,000s. So to compare these numbers, we had to go to the 10,000s. Well, my top number has no 10,000s, but my second number has 4. So that tells me that this number is larger than the top number. So 409,004 is actually less than 440,002. All right, so now we're going to compare the two numbers by using the symbols less than, greater than, and equal to. Write the correct symbol in the circle. So you'll notice at this time we don't have a place value chart. But if you're looking at these two numbers and you are confused, you could always put them in a place value chart. Because what I find happens with students sometimes is they just look at the first number. If you look at the first number in these two, or the first digit in these two numbers, well, you're going to see that 9 is greater than 3. But the problem is, if you write 94,981 right below this number and you line up the ones, tens, and hundreds and the thousands and the 10,000s, you're going to see that this 9, even though it's greater than 3, is in the 10,000s place, and this 3 is in the 100,000s place. And 100,000s are greater than 10,000s. Therefore, even though 3 is less than 9, this number actually is greater than, because this is 300,000 and this is only 90,000. Okay? So, sometimes this can get confusing to kids because they wrote these numbers and they're not in standard form. I always suggest go ahead and writing the number in standard form above it so that you can compare. So here I have 5 in the 100,000s, I have 8 in the 10,000s, I have 9 in the thousands, I have 1 in the hundreds, I have no tens, and I have no ones. So I have 589,100. For this one I have 508,000. So that would be 508,901. So, first of all, I notice that both of these have 100,000s. So they are the same in the 100,000. So they are equal. But when I look at the 10,000s, this has 8 10,000s and this has 0 10,000s. Therefore, 589,100 is greater than 508,901. Okay, let's look at C. All right, so this time they've written the number in unit form. So they've given me 900,000, so I'm going to put a 9 in the 100,000s. I have no 10,000s, so I'm going to put a 0. And I have 8,000s, comma. So I have 9 hundreds, 3 tens, 0 ones. And I'm going to compare that to this number. Well, first of all, I see that they are the same in the 100,000s, the 10,000s, and the thousands, and look at the hundreds. These two numbers are equal. I want you to try to do D all by yourself. First of all, I want you to go from unit form to standard form and then compare the two standard forms. If you get stuck or you're unsure, you can always press play and I'll walk you through it. So press pause at this time and try to do as much of this problem by yourself. Okay, so hopefully you try to do this problem by yourself. Let's see if we can do this together. So I've got 9 hundreds, and then I've got 5 10,000s. Well, that's kind of confusing, isn't it? They put these out of order to see that I was paying attention. So the 9 is in the hundreds place, but this 5 goes back here in the 10,000s. And there are no thousands, so I have to put a 0. I have 9 ones, but I have no tens. So I have 50,909. If that tricked you and you need to pause the video and erase, you can. But notice this says 10,000s, so I have to put it in the 10,000s place. And these are hundreds. Next, I have 6 10,000s. I don't have any thousands. I have 5 hundreds, 9 ones. So, because both of these are 10,000s, this number only has 5 10,000s and this has 6 10,000s. That tells me that this number is less than. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. So we're going to use the information in the chart below to list the height in feet of each mountain from least to greatest. Then name the mountain that has the lowest elevation in feet. So I have two directions here. First, I'm going to put them in order from least to greatest, and then I'm going to name the mountain that has the lowest elevation. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to list them from least to greatest. Now, first of all, I notice that all of these numbers have thousands as their greatest place. So if I'm going to go from least to greatest, I know that 4 is less than 5. So I already know that 5,344 feet is going to be the greatest. So I can go ahead and write that there. So I'm going to put a check mark by that. Now all of these have a 4 in the thousands place, so I'm going to go to the hundreds place. Which of these has the smallest hundreds? Well, I see 300s, 900s, 200s. Well, 200s would be the smallest, so I'm going to write 4,240 feet. That's going to be the least. And then next, which would come 300s or 900s? Well, 300s, right? So I have 4,340 feet, and then I have 4,960 feet. So now I have each of these mountains' heights in order from least to greatest. Next it said name the mountain that has the lowest elevation. Well, this was my lowest elevation. So when I go back to my chart, I see that this is Slide Mountain. So I'm going to write a sentence, Slide Mountain has the lowest elevation. And that just means that it's the lowest mountain. This would be the tallest, and this would be the shortest. Now we're going to arrange these numbers from least to greatest. I think that you can probably do this by yourself. I want you to press pause and try to put these numbers in order from least to greatest, and I'm going to pause my video too, and then we're going to come back and check together. Okay, so the first thing I did when I was trying to compare these numbers was I went through and I looked and I saw that this has, the greatest place in this number is thousands, thousands, hundreds, thousands, thousands. So because 820 has no thousands, I wrote it first. And then I put a little check mark because I knew that it was finished. And then I went back and looked at the thousands. So I have 8,000s, 2,000s, 2,000s, 8,000s. So because 2,000 is smaller than 8,000, I looked at these two numbers. But because they are the same in the thousands place, I had to look at the hundreds. So this has no hundreds, and 2008 also has no hundreds. So then I had to look at the tens place. And this has 8 tens, and this has no tens. So I put 2008 next. Now you'll notice that I put a colon between my numbers. That's just to help me to not get confused by the commas that are in the number. So then after 2008, this is actually a semicolon. I put a semicolon, and then I knew that 2080 had to come next because the other two numbers had an 8 in the thousands place. So now I was down to 8,002 and 8,200. So again, they are identical in the thousands place, so I had to look at the hundreds. And this number, 8,002, has no hundreds, and this number has two hundreds. So the number with no hundreds would be less. So I have 8,002, and then finally I have 8,200. Okay? So I want you to try to do number 5 by yourself, but I want you to be very careful and notice that it says arrange these numbers from greatest to least. So this time we're starting with the biggest number. So pause the video and do as much as you can. If you get stuck, you can always press play. Okay, so let's start by looking at the largest place. So this number has hundred thousands, hundred thousands, hundred thousands, and this number has 10,000s. So I know right away that 87,300 is going to be my least greatest number. So I'm going to go ahead and put it at the very end and put a little check mark by it. Now I'm going to go back to these last three numbers. They all have the same digit in the hundred thousands place. So next I have to go to the 10,000s place. So this has a 2, this has a 0, and this has a 2. So I know that this number is going to be smaller than these other two numbers. So let's see which one's going to be the biggest. So I'm going to have to look at the thousands place in these two numbers. This has an 8 in the thousands place, and this has a 0 in the thousands place. So I know that 8,000 is greater than no thousands, so this is going to be my greatest number, 728,000. And then I'm going to put my semicolon just so I can tell the difference. And then next is going to be 720,800. And then because 708,000 had no 10,000s, it's going to be smaller than the other two numbers, but it's greater than this number because it has 100,000s and this number does not. So we have 708,200. All right, our last problem. 1 astronomical unit, or 1 AU, is the approximate distance from Earth to the Sun. The following are the approximate distances from Earth to nearby stars given in AUs. Okay, so this is kind of like what we did in number 3 where they gave us a list, only they didn't put it in a chart, they just made a list for us. List the names of the stars and their distances in AUs in order from closest to farthest from the Earth. So basically we are looking at these distances and we are putting them in order from least to greatest. So let's take a look at these numbers. Now the first thing I'm going to do is see what the largest place value is in each of these numbers. Well, the largest place value in this is hundred thousands. This number has hundred thousands. This number has hundred thousands. This number has hundred thousands. And this number has hundred thousands. So we're going to begin by looking at the first digit of each number. So I'm looking for closest to the earth. That means it's going to be the smallest number, the least distance away from earth. So I see I have a 200,000, 200,000, 600,000, 300,000, and 500,000. Well, 200,000 is going to be the least, so I'm going to concentrate on these two numbers. One of these is going to be the closest to the earth. Since the 100,000s are the same, I'm going to go to the 10,000s. And I see that this has 7 10,000s and this has 6 10,000s. So that tells me that Proxima Centaurea is closest to the earth. So it says list the name and their distance. So some of these names get kind of long. So I'm going to abbreviate. I'm going to put PROX period CENT period. Then I'm going to put a little dash and I'm going to put its distance. 268,269 AUs because that's the unit. All right, now the next is going to be Alpha Centaurea because it's the only one that has a 2, which is the smallest 100,000. So I'm going to abbreviate. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and write Alpha. And then I'm going to abbreviate Centaurea, and I'm going to write 275,725,000 AUs. So now that you kind of see how I'm doing this, I'd like for you to pause the video and go ahead and put these last 3 stars in order from least to greatest, and then add them to our list. If you get stuck and you're not sure where to start, you can always press play and go along with me. Okay, so you can see here that the next greatest, or the next star that's closest to the earth would be Bernard's star, and I abbreviated it, and I knew it was the next greatest because it had a 3 in the 100,000s, and the other 2 had a 5 and a 6. So that meant that Sirius came next because it had a 5 in the 100,000s place, and that left Epsilon Eridani, I believe that's how you pronounce it, as the greatest distance away from Earth. The last 3, you just had to look at the 100,000s. So today we talked all about comparing numbers. Just remember that your first step is to look at the greatest place value. Sometimes they're going to trick you, and it can't just be the first digit. Sometimes it's not the first digit. Sometimes you have to look to see if one has 100,000 and one just has 1,000 before you can make your decision.